Join me as I challenge myself to camp alone in the woods while I share a spine-chilling story that just might be too spooky for the night. There's something about sitting around a campfire, deep in the woods, that just makes you want to hear a good scary story. Maybe it's the way the flames cast eerie shadows on the trees, or the way the darkness seems to press in on you from all sides. Whatever it is, there's just something about camping that makes scary stories feel a little more real, a little more terrifying. It was supposed to be a fun trip for a group of friends, a chance to get away from the hustle and bustle of daily life and reconnect with nature. They arrived at the campsite in high spirits, eager to spend a few days hiking and swimming in the beautiful remote wilderness. But as they settled in for the night, they began to hear strange noises, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, and the occasional unexplained thud. At first, they wrote it off as the usual sounds of the forest, but as the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more frequent. The campers tried to brush it off, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They huddled around the fire, trying to distract themselves with stories and jokes, but their laughter was strained and forced. Every so often, one of them would glance nervously into the darkness, wondering what could be lurking just out of sight. The fire crackled and spat, casting flickering shadows on the trees as the campers' imaginations began to run wild. As the hours dragged on, the noises grew more intense. The campers started to hear footsteps crunching through the underbrush, heavy and deliberate. It sounded like someone or something was circling their campsite, watching and waiting. The campers' nerves were stretched to the breaking point, their fear and anxiety simmering just below the surface. It was then that they started to notice strange shadows darting around the edge of the firelight. At first, they thought it was just the wind rustling the leaves, but as the shadows grew more defined, they realized with a jolt of fear that someone or something was moving just out of sight. The campers' hearts were racing now, their breath coming in short gasps as they wondered what was going to happen next. The sounds grew louder and more intense, the shadows twisting and writhing like living things. It was then that one of the campers noticed something that made their blood run cold. A figure, tall and imposing, was standing just beyond the edge of the firelight. Its face was twisted into a grotesque grin, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The camper's scream was drowned out by the sudden crash of thunder, and as the others turned to look, the figure vanished into thin air. As the campers struggled to process what they had just seen, they realized that they had a choice to make. They could try to confront the fear head-on, or they could abandon the campsite and flee into the night. Either way, they knew that their lives would never be the same again. In the end, the campers made their decision, and it was one that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. But that's a story for another time. If you've got a scary camping story of your own, I want to hear it. Share it with me in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my other spooky story videos for more thrills and chills. Thanks for joining me on this spine-tingling adventure. Until next time, stay spooky. Join me as I challenge myself to see if I can make the shadows come alive around the campfire tonight. There's something undeniably magical about gathering around a roaring campfire, watching the flickering flames cast an eerie glow on the surrounding trees. And then, there are the shadows, dark, mysterious, and always lurking just out of sight, waiting to spark our imagination. Shadows have a way of tapping into our deepest fears, of making us question what's real and what's just our imagination playing tricks on us. When we're sitting around a campfire, the darkness beyond the ring of light can be downright unsettling. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves makes us jump, and we can't help but wonder what might be lurking just beyond our line of sight. When I was a kid, my friends and I would always try to scare each other with stories of ghosts and monsters that lived in the woods. And it was always the shadows that seemed to bring those stories to life. We'd huddle together, our eyes scanning the darkness, waiting for something to move, to prove that our wildest fears were true. But even as adults, there's something about shadows that continues to fascinate us. Maybe it's because they're this reminder that there's still so much we don't know, so much that lies just beyond our understanding. Whatever it is, there's no denying that shadows have a way of tapping into our deepest fears, of making us wonder what might be lurking just out of sight. Shadows are all about perception, about the way our brains interpret light and darkness. When we're sitting around a campfire, the flickering flames create this eerie dance of light and shadow, making it almost impossible to distinguish reality from our imagination. It's no wonder that so many campfire stories feature shadows as the main characters. They're the ultimate symbol of the unknown. I remember one night, I was camping with some friends in these woods that were notorious for their ghost stories. We were all huddled around the campfire, swapping scary tales, when suddenly we saw this shadow move out of the corner of our eye. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before, tall, imposing, and seemed to be watching us. Of course, it was probably just a stray animal, but in that moment, it was all we could do to convince ourselves that it wasn't something more sinister. As I look back on that experience, I realize that it was the shadows that really made that night so unforgettable. They added this layer of tension, of suspense, that turned a simple camping trip into something truly unforgettable. And that's exactly what I want to capture tonight, the magic and mystery of shadows around the campfire. But here's the thing, I'm not just talking about any old shadow. I want to create a shadow that's truly alive, that seems to move and twist of its own accord. It's a tall order, I know, but I'm convinced that with a little creativity, we can make it happen. As I sit here, watching the shadows dance around me, I'm reminded of just how powerful they are. They have this way of tapping into our deepest fears, of making us question what's real and what's just our imagination. And that's exactly what I want to capture tonight, the essence of the shadows, and the magic they bring to our campfire stories. So, what do you think? Are you ready to see if we can make the shadows come alive around the campfire tonight? Share your own shadow stories in the comments below, and don't forget to check out my next video, where we'll be diving into the world of campfire myths and legends. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.